Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast for Thursday, November 3rd, the Week 9 Fantasy Football Preview Show. John McKechnie and Mario Puig here, running through every single game on this slate from all the fantasy angles that you could possibly want, possibly need. A lot to get to today, a lot of injuries, a lot of teams on bye, a lot of tough lineup calls to get through. Let's get it rolling. Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast presented by our friends over at No House Advantage. John McKechnie and Mario Puig kicking it with you on this Thursday. Mario, how did your Week 8 shape up, and how are you looking forward to this coming slate of games?
I don't know. I don't look at my best ball teams during the season, but I'm not really looking at this week either for what it's worth. But it's going to happen anyway.
This week, despite the sort of bye Mageddon, I wasn't overly active on the free agent wire. I think that some of the trendier names in pickups this week are not overly worthwhile. Obviously, some leagues you're going to be a little bit more pinched than others. But at the same time, I didn't think that most of the trendy guys were really worth picking up. I did pick up Sam Ehlinger in a 2QB league last week and was disappointed to see how Indianapolis used him. It's like, well, he can't throw, but he can run. It's like, well, we're going to make him throw and not have him run. Well, great.
Well, yeah, who could have seen that going badly? Washington accommodated almost literally every offense they saw before that, and then Frank Reich, a brave man, as it would turn out. I didn't realize just how solid of a dude Frank Reich is. That he's gonna get fired anyway because he should be fired because he sucks, and he's not dumb enough to not know that. Like I'll maybe let him be some level of dumb, but it's not a level high enough for him to believe like if I just fire Marcus Brady this week, I think we can get back on Jim Irsay's good side in whatever the 3 more weeks or whatever we're buying ourselves with that, and then we'll just ride out that storm there, and everything will be fine next year, and then we'll really build something. No, dude, you're getting fired. Stand up for your offensive coordinator. If Irsay is like just calling you like at 4 a.m. like we gotta fire someone, then you fire me, Jim, because he's giving him Marcus Brady. Like, what is that gonna do? Like, you just suck. Anyway, if they had used Ehlinger as a runner, they would have found passing easier, and instead they called one kneel down in the first half as his only carry. So, ta-da!
Yep, smash cut to Irsay like sniffing a guitar case that used to belong to Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then he's like, you know what? Someone's getting fired for this. But anywho, let's go ahead. We'll stay in the AFC South a little bit. We are going to kick things off. Again, we're getting through every single game on the slate this week. 6 teams on a bye, but that just allows us to get a little bit more in depth on the 13 games that we do have. Although I don't know how much depth we need for this
Finding
one.
so many good things the more we dig. So many competent organizations with a variety of skills to offer us.
It's not the best product that the league is putting out this year, but we digress. We got a Thursday night game between the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles going down to Houston to face the Texans, and they said on the World Series broadcast last night, Mario, that this is the 7th time that 2 cities have had their NFL teams and playing each other while their baseball teams were facing off in the World Series. I thought that was a fun fact.
It is a pretty fun fact. I guess more so for Philadelphia's side. I know they lost that game, the baseball game, but they're not going to lose this football game.
Nope.
Somewhat lower stakes, I suppose. 2 touchdown spread, full 14 points. So that's probably correct. I mean, it looks like Brandon Cooks isn't going to play, or it's not looking great at the moment anyway. Nico Collins was already out. They already were leaning on Philip Dorsett 2 weeks ago. So it looks like they might have Chris Moore and Philip Dorsett starting at receiver. And Moore had been, not that this makes any sense, Moore had been previously their slot receiver, and they kind of used him underneath of all things. And John, I'm assuming you remember Chris Moore at Cincinnati.
Boy, do I. In
Exact
Baltimore.
opposite. Yeah. Oh, in Baltimore. Yeah. I don't know why his NFL career has gone this way, but I know he's not built to play slot receiver in the NFL, not underneath anyway. Like the guy averaged 20 yards a catch over 4 seasons at Cincinnati and scored a touchdown like every 4 catches. So of course Houston's like, what if we made you like a curl route guy in the slot? So whatever the case, they're gonna have to try out something like that. Maybe Tyron Johnson as their third receiver, but you also might see as more as their third receiver in function, tight end 3 in name. Jordan Akins might be the guy to take those snaps. So Akins is someone to keep in mind and those showdown slates. Not to skip those other guys; they all have their respective cases. But yeah, no Cooks, no Collins. It seems like a good time to put the Texans on shutout watch. Jordan Davis is out for the Eagles, which sucks, but I don't think they need him at all. Uh, they got enough. They got enough ways to hurt the Texans on offense, and then the Texans defense probably can't do anything. They're probably as bad as ever at the moment because they're on the short week and they just got 32 carries of Derrick Henry. So
Yeah, that they are in the butcher world, they would say that they're tenderized. The Texans defense is, and
they've
I guess
marinated as well over
yeah,
several days.
stewing and juices, baby. But when it comes down to looking at the spread for this game, obviously super bleak looks for Houston here. But my one kind of inkling is that Philadelphia has pretty extreme first and second half scoring splits. They're first in the NFL in scoring in the first half. 21, they're averaging 21 points in the first half every game. It's pretty insane. But famously, they kind of, and understandably so, they take their foot off the gas a little bit in the second half. I think they're 27th in second half scoring, just because they haven't had to really keep scoring. So do you think that with that in mind and the spread checking in at 14 points at some spots, there's some way that the Texans can claw their way to a backdoor cover or a push?
Well, Tyron Johnson, I think, can be a good downfield receiver in the NFL, but I don't know if Davis Mills really hits that part of the field. Kind of imagine any way of the Texans moving the ball involving eating up a lot of clock also. So if they're moving the ball in the first half, I guess not to say something so obvious is like, well, if they move the ball all game, they're more likely to cover. Obviously, it's good to move the ball as much as possible in the game, but I mean specifically, they need to do it in the first half because I feel like if the Texans don't move the ball until the second half, maybe when the Eagles put in their backup defenders or something like that, then even in that case, they're probably eating up like half of the clock in that quarter to get a touchdown drive. So I don't know. I mean, I expect 3 touchdowns in the first half alone from the Eagles, and I don't expect them to get shut out in the second half. Like again, the Texans' run defense was already pretty much zero resistance, and now they're on a short week, and I don't think having to deal with Henry that many times is likely to make the healing process any faster. So I think the Eagles do score in the second half. I think the reason they haven't done it so much in the past is just because they don't really have like a power runner. Like they don't have a clock killing running back. The closest thing that they have is Miles Sanders, who's he's between the 20s back. He's a 210 pounder. But the Texans' run defense is so bad that even when they're selling out against the run to get the ball back in the second half, I don't think they're going to be able to stop the Eagles, even if it's like Boston Scott running the ball.
So on the other side, we may or may not be getting gaslit right now, Mario. There's
Uh,
some some notes that we said that Rex Burkhead was going to be starting all season. I'd love to go back into the archives and find where we said that Rex Burkhead was going to be starting all year. I think we definitely did say that there'd be a chance that Burkhead would be annoying early in the season, and he was.
right, what I said was Rex Burkhead over Marlon Mack. Sorry for getting that right. Yeah,
And
we were
both of us
definitely
have a
more
lot of
pro.
Damian
I
Pierce,
mean,
I believe.
we wrote stuff. You can find it. It's not up to my or your interpretation. And we said certain things about Damian Pierce, and none of them were to the effect of Burkhead is better.
Nope,
But that's a crack shot special. We call that one, and we
we
love
do.
him for it.
Prime time crack shot. We love it. Anything else to dig into from this game before we move on to the Sunday
Pierce
slate?
should have a pretty decent game. I mean, he's if they phase him out, it would be like they have to go to Burkhead and Dario Gombawale, and you can't really run with either of them. So if the Texans so much as call second half carries, Pierce could get those. So he could get 4 quarters of work, even if the Eagles are getting kind of blown out, because the alternative is they don't run more than like 3 times in that half.
Okay, all right. That definitely
And you can't
checks
throw on
out.
the Eagles, so it's like
No,
if the Texans get like 150 yards from scrimmage, Pierce is probably like 80 or more of that or something.
yeah, Pierce is really the only thing existing on that offense, especially with Nico Collins and Brandon Cooks both being sidelined. Going to have to start Davis Mills out of necessity in said 2 QB league. So as you can imagine, things not going super well over there. But anyway, let's move on over to Sunday. We got a fun one here in Atlanta. We got the Falcons playing host to the Chargers, who are coming off the bye. The Falcons just played a really exciting game on Sunday against the Panthers. That obviously was crazy. But
One
we're looking at
entirely on merit, John. They earned that one.
there's nothing goofy going on in that one. But the Chargers are 3-point favorites in this one. Total checks in at 49.5. But the Chargers, not too dissimilar in a sense from Houston in the way that they are really, really hurting as far as their pass catching personnel, to the point where I'm excited a little bit about DeAndre Carter this weekend.
Yeah, so I guess we'll have to see what exactly the Atlanta secondary is looking at. Like if AJ Terrell is back and it's not looking that great, I suppose. Like didn't practice Wednesday. If AJ Terrell is back, that changes quite a bit. Not so much that he's going to like remove any one particular person, but uh, the Falcons can give a lot of help to the other 2 or 3 corners when AJ Terrell is out there. Whereas when they don't have Terrell, everybody needs help, and they have to just kind of play like a bend but don't break and still probably break style of defense. So it's normally the case that the Chargers are so profoundly slow on offense, even at full health. And I would also say, even at full health, kind of lacking just general pass catcher ability. It's like there's Allen, there's Williams, and not a whole lot else. So no Williams, maybe no Allen, even now. Like he didn't practice Wednesday. That's
Got worse during the bye. This is just, it's so Chargers. It
I'm sorry. Did
hurts.
they clarify that it got worse during the bye?
That's what he said.
How do you do that? Okay.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know what is going on with that, but that doesn't sound encouraging. So in any case, John, if AJ Terrell is out, even if he's not the guy who would normally cover DeAndre Carter, it's still good, I think, for DeAndre Carter because it ups the chance that whoever's covering him doesn't have as much help as they would if Terrell were in, because Terrell doesn't need any help. So uh, I think, man, I hate how the Chargers pass catcher group is just not very good, and of course worse in light of the injury. But I think the Falcons, the Falcons defensive backs are bad enough slash beat up enough themselves, and Herbert such a good quarterback that even in even these Chargers receivers, these backups even should be fine for this game. If it was almost any other defense, and even if Terrell's in, I start to worry a little bit. Um, but yeah, against these backup Falcons corners, like even guys like Palmer and Carter, and I love how just deeply unserious about managing the Chargers roster, their GM slash Staley are. They still have Jason Moore being called up in 2022. This guy who's like 28 or 27, and I don't know if he's caught an NFL pass in like 6 years with the Chargers. Like, how do you not
Wow.
find someone better than that? Anyway, maybe even Jason Moore can make a play against these backup Falcons corners. I don't know, but I can't imagine Herbert getting rocked in this one. It seems impossible.
Jason Moore, shout out Findlay College. Findlay College. Hope I'm not
Is that like in
mispronouncing that.
Europe or something? What is that?
I don't know. I remember in high school we played against some school called Findlay Prep, so that must have been where they fed into. But um,
You went straight from high school to the Chargers practice squad.
that's the pipeline, man. That's what that is.
Well, yeah.
Um,
Anyway, they got a bunch of Gerald Everett. I guess could have a good game here because he kind of does wide receiver stuff for them a lot of the time. Parham, Herbert will make it work.
and do we think that this could be like a 40-point game from Austin Eckler?
Right. I always forget to address him because he's such a free space.
We have
I
him as
don't know
RB1 this
why.
week.
Yeah, I
He's
don't know
just
why he would. I don't know why he would go under 30 exactly.
yeah. So it's going to be bonkers from him this week. On the other side, the great question of our time, as always, was last week the start of the Kyle Pitts breakout.
Kyle Pitts has been awesome for his own part the whole time, and I know no one cares because that doesn't matter in fantasy. Uh, the frustration is totally understandable, but it's just one of those things like you got to understand that it was for reasons that don't have to do with him. So whether he continues also has to do with things that he has no control over. I think that the Falcons offense was working toward a new equilibrium, relative to before last week. They were working towards something where the defense finally starts defending the run the way they're supposed to, finally understands that the Falcons are not going to play 2022 offense the way other teams do. So you got to pull up another safety. And until you do, they're going to just keep doing this wishbone thing into the teeth of the defense and just straight up say, like, we are going to wear you down. We're going to tire you out. And then we are going to run past you uh, until you put that other safety up and stop trying to, mostly deal with Pitts and to a lesser extent London. So I think last week was an example of what happens when a defense is finally like, we gotta stop. We can't let Mariota get the corner. We can't let Algier and Huntley combine for 35 carries. And they're starting to defend as if they are trying to meet those goals rather than defend as if starting at the outset of the goal of just stop Kyle Pitts and the rest will work out. Like that was the plan, and it's not all working out for Atlanta's opponents. So if they adjust and if they play more like the Panthers did, then I do think Arthur Smith will take that. I think he'll dial that up for Pitts. But uh, if people want Arthur Smith to start at the outset, like we got to get Pitts going, and that from that point we will negotiate the offense's particulars. Like that's not going to happen. He's going to just take what he thinks the defense is giving him.
So do we think that this ends up being like the Chargers put Derwin James on
They
Kyle
should.
Pitts?
They absolutely should. I don't know why. I literally cannot imagine what else he would be doing unless he was on Pitts. Because
Okay,
like
so this
even
might be a
London,
tough one for Pitts then.
it could be. I will say if the usage is there, I will take Kyle Pitts against anybody. But they'll only take the usage if the Chargers are making everything else more difficult. And incidentally, the Chargers' run defense is pretty bad, so Arthur might find things a little easier on the ground in this one.
If we saw that Cordarrelle Patterson returned to practice on Wednesday, but that just opens a 21-day window for his potential return. So probably not expecting him to be out there. Do you have any interest in DFS or in deeper leagues where you're hurt by the bye in Algier or Huntley?
Yeah, both of those guys. I mean, Huntley, I don't. Maybe he just was one of those guys who had an outdoor pro day in the rain and the wind or something. But he's playing better than any 4.78 40 running back I can remember. It's improbable that he keep producing, I guess, but it's also improbable that he would have even produced this much. And uh, he was really productive at Ball State. So I didn't take Huntley seriously going into this year. I thought the usage that Huntley has claimed pretty much all would go to Algier in the event of a Damian Williams injury, and I imagine Damian Williams as the top backup originally. I didn't really imagine Huntley doing this, but he was super productive at Ball State too. And if he so much as could improve that 40 times to like a 4.7, then his prospect profile goes from like pretty much non-viable to guy who could produce if he gets the chance, and he's getting the chance. And the Chargers don't defend the run well, so I think both Huntley and Algier could reach 15 carries a game until Patterson is back.
You want to hear a bad Falcons backfield take? This one from last year. I thought Javian Hawkins, undrafted guy out of Louisville, was going
if
to be a guy.
if the NFL started implementing like a weight limit of 280 pounds or something like that, then Jalen Hawkins would be a real good running back.
But yeah, you're
He'd
probably
be a
not going to get it.
160-pound runner or whatever he was. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. What listed at a generous 183 was last we heard from him, released by the Rams in May. So
Tutu Atwell at running back, and yeah, I will say he deserved more of a shot if Atwell got a second-round pick, but neither of them belong on a roster, unfortunately.
Yep, that's just the way it is. Your spread pick for this game?
Sorry, what is it again?
We got the Chargers favored by 3. I like the Falcons.
I'll take the Chargers to cover that.
Okay, I'm on the Falcons. I know that they started hot against the spread, have since cooled off. I think that they've failed to cover each of their last 2 games, but the Chargers play goofy enough, and they always play down to their competition. I just have a hard time trusting them with more than a field goal.
They got to be careful, and if Herbert isn't anything much less than heroic, they're in trouble. It's just I think Herbert's pretty much always on it.
He is. Everything else around him, sans Eckler on that offense, though, is a bit of a concern. Other than, of course, national champion Jamari Salyer filling in ably at the left tackle spot. Before we get on to our next games, we got a quick message from our friends over at Blue Wire. And the chat has been very patient. Let's reward the chat. We got a couple of questions here. Jacob Glazer starting us out. 10-man league. This is a tight end question. Higbee, Freiermuth, or Greg Dulcich rest of the season?
That's tough. I would lean Freiermuth, but Higbee, when he's healthy, I guess I didn't follow up on what his injury was last week. When Higbee's healthy, he's playing like 65 snaps a game and getting upwards of like 8, 9, 10 targets. So I know it's not full point PPR, but if you went with him, I don't think anyone could really criticize it. I'm lower on Dulcich than most people. I mean, he's a busted coverage merchant. Maybe teams still choose to kind of not cover him because they don't care. I tend to think that the way the Broncos have been dialing up is going to provoke a defensive counter adjustment. And when that happens, I don't think Dulcich is going to do anything. Whereas Freiermuth, to me, especially in hindsight, is like not like a star level prospect, but about as close to blue chip as you can get without being blue chip. So with Claypool gone, I would prefer Freiermuth.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you the follow up. Do you think like who of that group of Steelers pass catchers does that Claypool departure help?
Well, the snaps might go, I don't know, like Steven Sims or something, but the usage in that part of the field, the next closest player is Freiermuth because Claypool was almost exclusively playing in the slot. And yeah, Freiermuth doesn't run those same routes. He doesn't line up in quite the same spot, but that's the next closest player proximity wise.
Oh dang! I just saw that Calvin Austin was out for the season with the foot injury that happened, I guess, last week.
I'm still a Steven Sims truther, John. If you had asked me Steven Sims or Calvin Austin, I'd be like Sims, no contest.
Austin was fun. Austin was fun at Memphis.
Yeah, he's pretty solid. Yeah, I think Steve Smith got a raw deal from Ron Rivera. What a loser Ron Rivera is, and he's been biding his time on the Steelers practice squad. But they must have noticed. They started seeing what Jay Gruden once saw because they were dialing up plays for Sims last week out of nowhere, and I don't know, man. If he's better than like Ray McLeod, you know.
Yes, everyone's better than Ray McLeod. And again, thank you for that question, Jacob. John wants to know. He just made a trade. We got to grade it. He just traded Fournette and DK Metcalf for Kamara and Keenan Allen. Is that a good trade? I'm just so skeptical on Keenan Allen.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know what's going on with him. I mean, Kamara can keep doing stuff like he did last week and is much more likely to do it than Fournette. But yeah, the Metcalf for Allen part needs the Allen part. Just get on the
yeah,
field.
yeah. So that I think if you can, I'll put it this way: if John's team is able to make it to the playoffs, and then you get Keenan Allen back, then I think that that ends up being a good trade. But I kind of have a hard time expecting Keenan Allen, especially with how he said he's not going to play again until he's 100%, 100%. We might be waiting until after Thanksgiving, so that's tricky. Sergio also has a question. Um, Here is a trade. Our thoughts. He would be sending. Oh, this is a big trade. Lamar and Zach Ertz and Chris Olave or Najee Harris for Travis Kelsey and Devontae Smith or some other people. Note to the chat. Some of
I
these
think
trades
I'd
are a little
rather have
bit
the first one.
okay. The first side, Lamar and
Because
Ertz and
I'm
Olave.
basically seeing this as Kelsey and Devontae Smith, because I'm taking Devontae over those other guys, for Lamar, Ertz, and Olave. And it's close, don't get me wrong, but Lamar and Olave to me, I don't know. I guess I don't know. I can see the case if this is like 10 teams or something, and Dak is your backup for Lamar, but I'd at the very least try like Dak instead of Lamar or something like that.
Yeah, I like that call. I'd like to hang on to Lamar if at all possible. Let's see here. We'll grab one more right now. Trey wants to know full point PPR. Start one of the following in the flex: AJ Dillon, Kyle Pitts, or Devontae Smith.
Yeah, that's also tough. Um, I'm not particularly drawn toward Pitts with this matchup, mainly for the Derwin James reason previously discussed. God, I don't know how to decide between guys like Dylan and Devontae. They both have the problem of like great matchup but unassured workloads. In you know, God, I guess I'd maybe go Dylan just because the Lions' defense is so bad, and Aaron Jones kind of got a lot of work last week. But if you go with Devontae, I like that too. It's just like one of those things. Like we, there could be five different players in the Eagles' offense scoring touchdowns today.
Right. I my reaction would be Devontae. I know Thursday night games
Yeah,
can
fair
be a little
enough.
bit funky, but
I got no
and
argument against Devontae at all. I'd almost like someone to just decide for me.
the Dylan part, if they weren't playing the Lions, it'd be a total slam dunk for Devontae. But the fact that it's the Lions, it's like,
That and Aaron Jones getting 20 carries or whatever he did last week. It's like he's not built to keep doing that, you know?
mm-hmm. But do the wheels fall off of that after just 1 week, or do they try it again? Well, we'll get there. We'll get to that game. But despite the Packers losing by 10 points on Sunday, I'm somehow encouraged by their performance on Sunday night.
It was
I
just
don't know
those
what.
two Allen interceptions. Like those two Allen interceptions were basically as bad as the two Trevor Lawrence ones, but no one cared because there was lots of other yardage and stuff. But
Mhm.
Packers should have lost by another 10 points.
Probably, but they didn't.
They
And
didn't.
I don't know. There's some Rodgers just kind of like vintage running around. The Samari Torre touchdown was sick. I don't know. The Packers might find. I don't think that the Vikings are as good as their record says. I'm not saying that the Packers are going to make a run at the division, but I don't know.
The rest of the
They
division
might
does
not be as
suck.
dead as I thought.
Yeah.
Is basically where I'm landing on it. Let's go ahead, keep things going. Let's get Dolphins Bears in the mix. We got the Dolphins 5-point favorites. Dolphins, one of the more active teams at the trade deadline, bringing in Bradley Chubb, of course, the big headliner. I thought that the Jeff Wilson trade was also shrewd because obviously he was blocked in San Francisco basically completely. Has that experience with McDaniel. We know that Mostert is, you don't want to say ticking time bomb, but you don't want to be counting on him to be playing for the entirety of the season necessarily. Get rid of Chase Edmonds, I believe, too, in the process. So Your thoughts on the Dolphins, what they did at the trade deadline and how things are looking for this week against a Chicago team that is showing a bit of a pulse, even if, they've also kind of like completely hamstrung themselves defensively now.
Well, I think Mike McDaniel's doing a great job running the Dolphins offense. I'm not going to assume he's any good as a personnel evaluator, much like, McVay and Shanahan can't do it. There's a totally distinct possibility that McDaniel doesn't know how to scout either. And I would, if depending on how much input he had on their offseason approach, there might already be grounds for worrying a little bit about that. Like if he went out and had any input on signing Chase Edmonds and then got into training camp and obviously into the course of this season and was like, I don't even know what the hell to do with this guy, then that's concerning to me because like, why did you sign him? Uh, if you thought he could do something that he couldn't do, then how often does this happen with you? Is this like the Wilson thing? It's not going to hurt them too much. Obviously, I do question whether it was an efficient use of the pick, but ultimately, I don't care because McDaniel clearly made that trade because he was just going, I'm sick of trying to get Edmonds and Gaskin and these other running backs to understand, my very particular system here. And he wanted to bring in someone that he didn't have to teach or, give any more coaching attention. And Jeff Wilson was that. So I can understand that utility factoring into the 5th round price, even if Wilson is, basically not worth any kind of trade pick. So Wilson can eat up some carries and he can take up some space, take up some time off the clock without putting Mostert on the line, and that should all do the trick for them uh, as far as that limited need. But it is still a little weird to me how they just we're surprised at the player that Edmonds was. The Chubb trade. Uh, I gotta admit, I don't have that great of a sense of the kind of player Chubb is. I've tended to be a little underwhelmed. I think that Ejiro Evero is doing a great job with Denver. So Chubb's production this year, I'm not necessarily chalking up just to Chubb. I'm not taking it for a given that he does a whole lot with the Dolphins, but they need him to do a lot because they traded that 1st round pick and gave him that huge contract. So
Right.
they got to get something from him. John, I'm wondering, we got this photo up of you taking a big swig of the water bottle. Is that because you are frozen, or is that deliberate?
My camera seems to have glitched out, which is great
So
because
that's
I've
a
got
freeze spot.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing. That's. It
yeah,
looks like you were doing some kind of pose.
yeah. I'm pretty rattled about it, to be honest with you. So we'll see if my camera
Your
decides
John
to.
is beat red in real life, so
Oh, dude, I'm looking like my shirt right now. I'm sweating. This this has gone completely sideways. All right, folks, I'm going to be a talking RotoWire AVI for the remainder of this podcast, I guess. Anyway, um, so good summation on the Dolphins and the potential that McDaniel falls from that tree of the offensive genius who also is bad at scouting. And like you said, we'll see what Chubb can do
they went out and
along.
signed Cedric Wilson too, and just basically made him a healthy scratch. Yeah,
True.
I'd like to see Mike be a little less surprised by the players he chooses.
Wait a second. Um, but as it all pertains to this game, we know that the Bears just gave up a ton of points last week to the Cowboys. We know that the Dolphins have one of the more electric offenses when they're all healthy, and they are. So, is there any way that the Bears, especially Sands, Robert Quinn, and Roquan Smith, are able to slow
That
this
should
down? Is
help.
this
Yeah, those corners can't cover these receivers. It's not going to be quite as pronounced as last week, playing in Detroit with those corners. But it's something a little bit like that. I mean, Jalen Johnson's good. Uh, Even he, though, I don't think has any sort of prayer against Tyreek Hill. Like it's specifically speed that would cause a problem for Jalen Johnson. Like he's more of like a cover, 2 kind of corner ideally, but whatever limitations he has almost always has to do with speed. So Hill and Waddle might make Johnson basically bad in this game, and he's the only player capable of playing well at corner in any other context for the Bears. So uh, unless something weird goes on with the weather or like the wind or whatever, if the gravity just seems a little more pronounced there, and it throws Tua off. I get something like that is what it would take because these receivers are just going to be wide open all the time.
Yeah, the Bears are going to have a lot of trouble keeping the Dolphins off the scoreboard and in their territory. Is there anything that we've seen maybe from this Dolphins defense? Again, they just got Bradley Chubb, so the pass rush should be a little bit more lively. The Bears famously are giving up sacks at an alarming rate, but the Bears offense even still has looked better over these last couple of weeks. They haven't been completely the issue for them. So do you think there's any way that they kind of keep some sort of pace, keep this competitive, or at least like show some flaws in this Dolphins D?
Yeah, excuse me. I don't really have a great sense of the Dolphins' defense. They have a couple of weird things going on, a couple like parts that still seem less than settled into me. Like they lost that safety, Brandon Jones, who seemed to be kind of emerging as like a rover kind of defender for them. Uh, Nick Needham was out last week, and I kind of never really took Nick Needham seriously because he runs about a 4.7, and I don't know how you can play corner running a 4.7, but he's still probably better than some of these other guys they've been trotting out while injured. And like I really don't know. I can't figure out much about this Cater Kohu or whatever the undrafted slot corner. So I'm personally not that convinced on the Dolphins defense. I know they've had some okay results, but we don't know when Byron Jones is going to get back or like if he's going to get back. So I'm at corner, especially. I'm not convinced. And Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, that will clearly work as an edge defense. I don't have a good sense of their interior though, so I don't think this makes their defense good if it was short of that mark before.
Okay, so but bottom line here, it's a defense
Against the
that
Bears, it'll work. Yes.
definitely
Yeah.
should. Um, I think with the way that the Bears have played lately, I guess both those games were away from Chicago. It's kind of more of a slog there. Although I looked at the weather, it's not supposed to be bear weather in Chicago just yet
Part of
this
it's the
weekend.
vibes, you know? It's like that field is cursed or something.
Oh,
It's
it's
just
it's
sucks
horrendous.
there.
I've been to a couple of games there in my day. It's like this weird spaceship that they just kind of dropped in like the middle of Chicago, right on the lake. Mm, I don't know. But as it goes, Dolphins -5, over under 45.5. I like the over a lot in this spot. I think the way that these offenses have played and how bad the defenses are as well. I could see the Dolphins pushing into the 30s, and I could also see the Bears pushing into the 20s.
Yeah, again, it would take something weird from Tua's part for the Dolphins offense to be a letdown because you can just throw like slants every single play to Waddle and Hill, and eventually they're going to make the corner just miss, and that it's going to be a touchdown. So if Tua's not profoundly off, then definitely like the Dolphins side of the point total. It's the Bears side that I don't know what is much to think, but because it's like they got to run the ball to move the ball realistically anyway, and the Dolphins' run defense is better than the pass defense. So and running the ball moves the clock faster. So I don't know. I definitely like the Dolphins to cover. I just I can't. I want to actually say more than 5 points, and I was trying to think how much, and I guess I should stop at like 8 or something.
Okay, so pretty convincing victory on tap here, potentially for the Miami Dolphins. Before we get on over to our next game, which will be Bengals versus Panthers, that's going to be kind of an interesting one. We've got a message from our friends over at No House Advantage. No House Advantage is changing the game by offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today. Play and pick 'em contests versus other people for the shot at winning big cash prizes. Download the app, choose a contest, select your player props, earn points for correct picks, and climb the leaderboard for your shot at hundreds of thousands of dollars every week. You can also test your skills versus the house and 20x your entry if you hit all your picks. Bet on up to 5 player props / over unders or individual player matchups across every major sports league, including NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR. Sign up now with promo code NHAWIRE. That's NHAWIRE at nohouseadvantage.com or download the app on the app stores to get a first deposit match up to $25. Make sure to check out No House Advantage today and experience daily fantasy sports redefined, because it's not just how you play, but also where you play. You don't want to miss out on this. Also got a message from our friends over at NFL All Day. NFL All Day is the officially licensed digital collectible of the NFL. It's a whole new way to express your fandom by owning the greatest moments from your favorite players and teams. Each moment on NFL All Day features a limited edition video highlight of one of the greatest plays from the NFL's past or present. From OBJ's iconic one-handed catch to Patrick Mahomes' 5 touchdowns on 5 straight possessions, or Brian Urlacher's 85-yard pick six against the Packers, there's truly a moment on NFL All Day for every fan. And it doesn't stop at being able to own a collection of your favorite moments, because NFL All Day rewards collectors for their fandom. You see, NFL All Day collectors have earned once in a lifetime experiences, like literally going on stage at the NFL draft to announce draft picks and meeting some of the biggest names from the 2022 NFL draft at the NFLPA rookie premiere. What's the best way to get started? Head to NFL All Day to sign up and redeem a free limited edition NFL collectible featuring Patrick Mahomes. Don't miss out on NFL All Day's next gen fan platform and start unlocking rewards and experiences today. So that was from our friends over at NFL All Day. All right, onward. Cincinnati versus Carolina. Cincinnati 7.5-point favorites at most places. They return home after getting shellacked on Halloween night by those Reese's Cups, the Cleveland Browns. Carolina, meanwhile, is looked a little better. Not that that was a high bar to clear over the last couple of weeks. Now they go to Cincinnati. Cincinnati, short week, but they figure to be pretty salty after last week's result. 7.5. Obviously that moves us past a key number in the betting world. Your thoughts on this matchup?
I don't like the Bengals to cover that. I'm worried about them even winning the game because they have real problems, and those problems just get shown that much more clearly when a guy like when your best player, Jamar Chase, gets hurt. Uh, all of a sudden, everything that you're bad at is more evident. So when you're so bad, for instance, at your left tackle pass blocking rep, that what the hell is it? I don't even remember that Oklahoma fifth round defensive end that the Browns got. Like when that guy's beating Jonah Williams, you got a crisis on your hands just right there. That one fact, your left tackle is that bad that you need a Jamar Chase at the very least to get out of this, and what you don't have one seems like a problem for you. Even against this Panthers defense, I mean, they got players who could really hurt them. Brian Burns obviously is a problem, and I don't know if anyone's confused about why the Rams might have reportedly offered 2 first rounders for Burns. I don't know why the Rams in particular would do it, but I understand that valuation of Brian Burns because people might look at his sack totals and be like, why do they care so much about a guy who has 9 sacks every year? Like, well, how much are teams throwing against the Panthers? Like, they don't need to throw against the Panthers to get leads. So they run the ball and they win games, and they don't give Burns that many pass rushing opportunities. But if he were on a team with so much as an average offense, Brian Burns would be in the conversation for the league sack title. So him going against Jonah Williams and the right tackle, presumably not much better either. You get Derek Brown's doing a little bit on the interior, and not that this has to do with the offense, but the Bengals might be without their top corner, Chidobe Awuzie, who hurt his knee last week and left the game. Slot corner Mike Hilton wasn't practicing Wednesday with a finger issue. Trey Flowers is Chidobe Awuzie's backup. He's not practicing as of Wednesday with a hamstring. So this looks like another game where DJ Moore and Terrace Marshall even could keep going. And if you got Deontay Foreman giving you so much as 55 yards on the ground, and if DJ Moore and Terrace Marshall can put together, ideally something like 150 or more, that's enough to beat, I think, this Bengals team with how bad the Bengals offense has looked. And like you got J.C. Horn maybe giving some trouble to T. Higgins. I mean, T. Higgins can win even when he's covered, but he's going to have to. And J.C. Horn can play more physical than most corners. So I don't know. It seems like a real dangerous spot for the Bengals, in my opinion.
So I think that all those points are definitely valid, and I think that the Bengals are a flawed team that aren't going to be able to reach really close to the heights that they did a year ago. And the breakdown on the Panthers I thought was particularly strong. I just feel like if that despite the Bengals and their relative shortcomings in certain key areas, I mean the offensive line looking like it did when Joe Burrow was a rookie this past week. I mean that's a huge concern, not just for this week, but I think just the rest of the season. That doesn't seem like a problem. It's going to get better, and I think it's also worth pointing out that it's a little bit weird to me that when the Bengals haven't had the full strength receiving core, they've looked very, very average to bad. Like even
Well,
even when Chase was healthy, but Tiggins was dinged up.
yeah, so when they run that three receiver base and it's all just kind of like ISO ball across the board, just like beat your one-on-one matchup as an offensive scheme, like you need the actual talent advantage. And if you don't have it, you're just gotta, at the very least kind of like a leak in the boat. And it might be more like a, collapsing pillar at that point. So when they are so dependent on Jamar Chase giving X level of effectiveness, productivity, playing capital, whatever you want to call it, and then it's just gone. And your attempt to replace it is, what if we give those 55 snaps to Southern Mississippi bad Mike Thomas and Trent Taylor? You got to have better depth than that. If you are so dependent on these three pillars, these two particularly, Higgins and Chase, then you have to have some other thing to support your offense if one of them is not there. They don't have it. They just they have questions. That's all that they have in response. And uh, playing Trent Taylor, playing Southern Mississippi Mike Thomas, that's playing 10 on 11. And your offensive line sucks. You particularly when your offensive line sucks, you cannot be playing 10 on 11. And the Bengals have to. And there's again real players on that Panthers defense who can make them pay for that fact.
And you toss in the fact that okay, so we don't have Jamar Chase for a little bit. Why don't we run the ball more? Joe Mixon has not looked good.
Yeah,
So
I think it's to the point that's part of the one of the specific problems of playing 10 on 11 is like it's a lot easier to defend the run when Trent Taylor is out there, like even setting aside what he might do as a route runner, which isn't much more than likely, but even if he were to do something, like you're giving up so much structural like equity or whatever, like you're losing so much of the physical product that you normally put out there, and they just don't have the sum of parts to replace it. So I don't know. I don't have the guts to say the Panthers win, but I kind of wish I did, and I really would be surprised if the Bengals covered.
I am on the Bengals to cover, but I feel a lot worse about it now after this discussion.
Awuzie being in would be big because he could contain theoretically DJ Moore, but if it's like
He
Trey,
is out. He's out.
okay, so Trey
ACL.
Flowers are worse against DJ Moore. I mean, that's just running that Falcons scenario again. The Falcons backups. It's like it might look rough for DJ Moore. It might take all 10 targets, but you're not stopping him for 10 targets with these corners.
No, I don't think so. Even with PJ Walker at quarterback. Let's hit a couple more questions here. Trey wants to know start one of these guys in PP or sit one of these. I'm sorry, in PPR. Tyler Boyd, Devin Singletary, or Michael Carter.
Who did the Jets got?
The Jets have the Bills.
Yeah, I'd sit Carter.
Okay. Two quarterback league. Tom Brady or Andy Dalton.
God, what has happened to the world? Who's the Saints? They got.
They have the
I'd go. I'd
Ravens.
go Brady. I'd go Brady.
Okay.
I know it's not going to work, but how can we pick Dalton over Brady?
It just we can't be.
Ravens aren't that bad, right? Like it
They've gotten
can't.
better. They've gotten better defensively. At the end of the show, I think I might have some revelations to share with you.
Okay.
Baby Santa also wants to know half point PPR. One of these pairings. Option A is Jacoby Myers and James Conner. Option B is Devin Singletary, Rashad Bateman, and Devin Duvernay. I'm just sketched out on
So a
what Bateman's
trade?
going to be the rest of the season.
Oh, okay. Man, I like Myers. I love Connor when he's healthy. I just don't know what's going on. I like that second side, I think. I mean, it's going to be tough to get Bateman and Duvernay in the lineup at the same time, but at worst, if Bateman's out, then you can go to Duvernay. And I don't personally think Singletary's going to lose much work. Or maybe I'm getting that wrong, but I think Singletary. I'm not even convinced Hines is a better pass catcher than Singletary. So I think because Singletary is or I'm thinking anyway, he's a starter for one of the maybe the highest scoring offense, and I still expect him to get like 3 targets, 4 targets a game. I kind of prefer the Singletary Ravens side a little tiny bit.
Devin Duvernay looks good. He looks like a real NFL
Yeah,
receiver. It's
Greg Roman is the problem there, and that's not going away, admittedly, but I don't know. James Conner, with the injury that he has, and with like Benjamin showing something, I don't know. I don't know what we can take for granted on the other side. Is kind of part of the problem for me.
okay. All right. So we'll go with what's behind door number 2 in that case. Thank you, baby Santa. Okay. Onward. Next game. Mario, I'm going to intro this game, flip it over to you, briefly leave the studio, see if I can fix this camera problem, jump back in. It should just be about 10 to 12 seconds. Sorry to do some live on air production here, but that's where we're
Hey, if
at.
you hadn't told me you were doing it, I wouldn't have even known. I just see the RW logo.
Well, the listeners they love a little peek behind the curtain. It's fun. But anyway, Packers 3.5 point favorites on the road in Detroit against the Lions. Uh, your thoughts here? I'm jumping.
Right. So I thought that the Packers, and I still think that the Packers have a lot of issues on offense, and I basically think they're not very good. I think they're kind of a bad team, and I'm not really confident Matt LaFleur realizes that. I don't know if LaFleur's got his eye on the ball in general. I don't really know. I'm not sold on anything particularly optimistic with them. However, the Detroit defense has no talent. This is almost by design. Like we just knew that they wouldn't have any good players. The one players that they were supposed to have who were good were like, I guess Malcolm Rodriguez, you could say, and Derek Barnes, maybe Okuda. But it was supposed to be Aiden Hutchinson, who uh, it's early. I don't want to say he's just a bust, but he's not going to be whatever they wanted him to be. They're already talking about like moving him around. Oh, John, you're there.
Yeah, man, we're back.
Yeah, so Hutchinson being a zero, a total dud, has the defense worse than expected, but it was still expected to be just terrible. And like the Packers just have no grounds for so much as even struggling for like a quarter against a team with this personnel. And I don't think it should be an issue for them. Like, I guess traditionally you worry a little bit more about Rodgers having an off game on the road, bizarrely, but I don't know. I think this Lions team is an exception, and the dome. If the Packers have some sort of like road drag, I think it would sooner show on the defense rather than the offense in this case. So I think Rodgers has been basically a buffoon this year and repeatedly embarrasses himself. But I would be just completely shocked if he had anything other than a good game here. And whoever the receivers are, if Lazard's out, fine. I don't know why they can't seem to get Watkins going more. I know he was getting open the first couple games that he played this year. Last week they didn't throw to him at all.
Well, you got the
Dob-
concussion.
well, that he played a decent amount and they didn't use him at all. But yeah, Dobbs is good in my opinion. So if Rodgers isn't throwing him under the bus and it keeps going back to him, like I know Dobbs had a couple rough games there, but he's good, and
Yeah.
their passing game doesn't go if they don't get him the ball.
No, exactly. So, I think Dobbs coming on, and I feel like Tunyon looks spry.
Compared to Mercedes Lewis, probably, yeah. And
So,
no, I like Tunyon. I just think it's funny how I don't know, like they're just so bad at evaluating players sometimes, and they have like third rounder Josiah DeGuara playing 10 snaps is just like a total nothing player. Nice job, Gutekunst. When is the last time that guy did anything right? By the way, like even his like so-called good moves of like signing Zadarius Smith just culminated in trading him to a divisional opponent. Anyway,
Yeah, I
um,
guess they got Preston Smith that year as well.
they still have Preston Smith. Yeah. So anyway, idiot GM, team resultingly somewhat stupid too, but they should be able to take care of business here.
Yeah, I think Packers -3.5 is my best bet
Oh yeah, I'd take that.
for this week. I really do like it, which obviously makes you nervous anytime that, but even still, do you like the pack in the spot? I think that they start to maybe show a little bit of signs of life, and I
Even if
talked
they're
about.
dead, it's fine. They'll still cover that, I think.
Yeah, and let's see here. Talked about Samari Torre like it, during draft season and everything. But if he is pressed into some sort of role here, as much as I like Amari Rogers potentially coming out of college, it feels like Torre is more involved right now. Has a little bit of the vaunted Aaron Rodgers trust. I think that he's a little bit interesting if he gets some snaps in this one. If Watson is out, I think that would end up being the case. And the Packers' run game last week was looking pretty strong. Although I don't think the Bills were overly like trying to stop the run so much because it was effectively the Packers running the
Right.
clock out on themselves a little bit. On the Detroit side of this, what was at the very least a fun offense to start the year has kind of dwindled a bit. Your thoughts on guys like, and they obviously got rid of TJ Hawkinson. What is the big impact from that? Because I can't imagine that Brock Wright is of anything of interest. Although I did like James Mitchell coming out of college a little bit actually. Now that we're on this topic.
Yeah, Mitchell is interesting to me. He couldn't do any athletic testing because of some injury or another, but he looked pretty athletic. It's tough. It's kind of like risky to try to read too much into that, especially when it's a smaller player, and he is a pretty small tight end. But I don't know. He's one of those guys who, at least when you saw him play, you'd kind of be like, well, "Who's that one?" You know.
Yeah, I
So
mean 17 yards a catch as a tight end in college, that's pretty good.
yeah, so he's interesting. But yeah, that trade is bizarre to me for so many reasons. I don't know why you would want to keep him in the division like that. But then again, I don't know why the Vikings are making that trade either. It's like they got issues that have nothing to do with their tight end reps. And I don't think they're going to get anything for this trade for the most part. So it just seems to me like both teams making each other worse. Um, Goff doesn't have much of a margin of error because he sucks. So taking Hawkinson off the field is like now you're going to make Goff worse. You're going to make, I bet, St. Brown a little bit less effective because, I mean, those guys run in a similar part of the field as a defense. You can't just simply cover them both. You can't get enough guys into that amount of space to divvy it up like that. You can kind of sell out more to stop St. Brown in the middle of the field without Hawkinson there. So the target volume is great, and St. Brown is good for his own part. But I think even Rasul Douglas, who is the one getting eaten up by Diggs in that game, the Packers DC is just an idiot. I can't believe that. Like putting Jair Alexander all game on Gabe Davis. Like what? Why? And anyway, they
Just
left
let
Russell.
yeah, we're just gonna let Stefan. We're gonna make Stefan Diggs beat us. Okay,
We're
he's going
gonna we're
to.
gonna give Douglas a little tiny help over the top because Diggs can't beat anyone underneath, famously. So yeah. Anyway, Douglas was getting lit up in that game, but Douglas's limitation is speed specifically. Like he's basically a safety. Like, he doesn't even belong at corner. He can't play corner in most schemes in the NFL. The Packers DC just kind of thought like, oh, Douglas must be good because he intercepted some passes off the practice squad last year or whatever. So basically, like a sentimental evaluation of the guy. He can't actually play in a starting role. But uh, I don't know. I think St. Brown is one of the kinds of receivers who Douglas is least frightened by. Like he's afraid of speed. He doesn't want to see Khalif Raymond. He'd rather see St. Brown.
I got thrown by a comment there for a second. I shouldn't have even admitted that, but yeah, I mean the Hawkinson move. now even more defensive attention underneath is going to be put on St. Brown. So, I mean, targets should be there, if not more so, but, there is the potential for just kind of less effective, efficient results from Hawkinson being gone. So yeah, things are looking pretty bleak in Detroit. Unfortunately, had some optimism, as did most people coming into the season. Let's go ahead. Let's get Raiders Jags going here. The Raiders 1.5 point favorites against Jacksonville. Jacksonville coming off the London game. The Raiders coming off of out of nowhere one of the great egg layings of the
Simply
entire
the
season.
worst team of all time.
Oh,
Yeah, they're really rough, man. And they had some weird illness thing running through the team, including Devonte Adams last week. I don't know if that had like, it would it really be so shocking if some team we hear in after the season or something, we hear a report like, oh yeah, like 8 of those guys had COVID that game. They're just like playing through it because they didn't have whatever bad symptoms. I don't know if that's what was going on with the Raiders, but it seemed like they were a bit messed up, even for them, even with Josh McDaniels already seeming to have completely lost control. It's just like, wow, even for you idiots, this is pretty bad. Uh, they can't possibly be that bad, I guess, 2 weeks in a row. No one's that bad against the Jaguars either. So they're gonna have some sort of better result than last week, but it's like, let's. I don't know what they need to get going, and it's like even like basic functions are becoming difficult for them. Like they could have been a bad team even with Devonte Adams getting like 90 yards in that game or something, and yet even he was just a complete zero. So uh, I think the Jags win, but only because anybody can probably beat the Raiders. And for things reaching that particular low of a point, it's like not that we've heard specifics yet, but I have to imagine Josh McDaniel Josh McDaniels is already having some kind of issue, like
yeah.
shit,
I
like
saw. I
guys.
saw something from the one of the Raiders beat writers said that McDaniels was having another long conversation with Mark Davis after the game.
Right. So that's just like we know the seed is hot already, but like what we don't know is just what the hell is going on in there, and like what is like there's probably some crazy stories that guys have in there that haven't gotten to the press yet about just like, whoa, dude, wait till you hear about what was going on, like how McDaniels did this one thing. Like the Urban Meyer stories before we heard them, like that kind of stuff might be going on. And
Oof.
if things reach a certain level of administrative dysfunction, it's just like all bets can be off. You can lose to anybody by any amount. So I think the Jags win, but mostly just because it seems like the Raiders are just completely imploding.
Are you surprised that it's gone this bad for McDaniels?
Yes, I might have been more I might not have been more wrong about anything other than the effect of Josh McDaniels. Like I thought, whatever. I think basically my outlook was like pretty much every coach is stupid. Pretty much every team is stupid. Uh, the NFL is largely just a fraternity of idiots letting each other cyclically win and then lose certain seasons, and each upswing is sold as like a reason to ownership. Like, see, stick with this guy. He's a good, reliable coach. He's got experience. And that's how you end up with like the same 22 coaches always holding jobs over a 15-year span, while like a completely forgotten cast of other idiots gets cycled out in between. But Josh McDaniels being this bad, I just it's part of too why you have to almost immediately go to the theory of like there must be some kind of just rotted detail here, like something about like they can't get practices done, like they can't get like there's something contentious, or like players not people coaches not getting along, something like that has to be going on, because like the results are too bad to be explained otherwise. Even if you thought Josh McDaniels was bad, it's like he's getting worse results than he did initially in Denver, and he doesn't have Tim Tebow at quarterback. Like something's just way worse this time somehow.
Yeah, I can't believe it. I figured, kind of going back into the incubator, going back to New England for as long as he did, it would have, kind of ironed out some of the issues that were obviously present in Denver that first run as a head coach. But no, this is worse somehow. With but a lot
And they have
better
good
pieces
players
to work
getting
with.
absolutely nothing too. It's like
Insane.
that's the part that's shocking because there's a certain level of like you can only screw this up so much, and with McDaniel's it's like actually you can't. You can screw it up more than should have been possible. Theory said this was impossible, but you have done it.
He truly incredible stuff from him. Let's hit a couple more questions from the chat. Suave JP wants to know: would you trade Lamar and ETN for Josh Allen, Mike Evans, and Najee Harris? That's a nice return. I know that Najee Harris hasn't been awesome, but I mean, you get Josh Allen. Mike Evans is really the only thing that seems to be working in Tampa Bay right now.
Yeah, I'd do that.
So like that one, and then rank these four rest of season: AJ Dillon, Wandale Robinson, Darnell Mooney, Kadarius Toney. I have Tony in dead last of that group, probably. I don't know. But
Probably, yeah. I don't know if he's gonna really even do anything this year.
I think that the order we listed it out is probably the correct one.
Yeah,
Maybe Mooney
Mooney's
over
tough for me
Wandale.
because I think Mooney has ability, but and Wandale disappeared last week against the Seahawks of all teams. So Dylan first. I'd flip a coin, I guess, between Robinson and Mooney, but I kind of lean Mooney. I think second.
Okay. All right. That checks out. Tony wants to know why is there such a lack of news regarding the Colts backfield? And it's like, well, I'm a bad guy to ask about that because I run our college football stuff at RotoWire. I had to dig deep onto twitter.com yesterday to find a student reporter who had a picture of the best player in the Mid-American Conference, Lou Nichols, wearing a football uniform yesterday and take that and run with it because there was nothing actually coming out of Central Michigan about whether or not he was playing. So bad guy to ask about the lack of info. NFL gold standard of injury info, at least relative to college. Oh,
I think the football coverage has been on whatever there has actually been said. The problem is, and if you're specifically wondering like how Taylor has had a setback with his ankle, it's like because he played too early on a high ankle sprain, which is exactly what we said would happen. It's a 4-week injury. You try to come back after 3. Like Taylor at 80% still looks good, so they thought like, oh, he's fine. It's like he's fine because he's a freak. His ankle is not healthy, so he
right.
got hurt. Deion Jackson steps up when Taylor can't play, but there might be room for Jackson even when Taylor is healthy because Naheem Hines, of course, is gone, and Jackson has, in my opinion, already proven better as a receiver than Hines. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, Taylor's ankle just had a pop-up aggravation, basically.
Yeah.
And
Facts.
Swift, they just there's no information about it. Like the Lions never tell us like he practiced all the week before and then he didn't even play in that game, let alone last week playing and simply not getting as much work as expected. That happened last year too when they played I think in Chicago. It's like he practiced all week and he had like 4 carries. It's like that's just something that they've done. They don't tell you how hurt he actually is, and no one can make them.
God, the curse of the first overall consensus pick continues just in fantasy football,
DeAndre Swift.
Oh no, I was talking about Jonathan Taylor,
Oh, Jonathan Taylor. Yeah.
but
It's
McCaffrey
yeah.
the last couple of years.
Reich and Ballard, just two scoundrel idiots, and they have made they've made this world, and we have to live in it.
We sure do, unfortunately. Josh Palmer or Russell Gage this week?
I kind of hate both of them, but I'd go with Palmer because, well, particularly if Keenan Allen is out, I would definitely go Palmer. I think I'd go Palmer even if Allen is in though.
We have a pretty large gulf between the two of them in our weekly rankings, although neither of them cracked the top 36 for receiver. But Josh Palmer, wide receiver 40 this week. Russell Gage, receiver 85. So I think Palmer safely ahead in that one. The Bucks are toast, beyond toast. That Bucks Rams game, I'm looking
They are
forward
downright divorced, John.
they're moving out. They're eating SpaghettiOs right out
Did
of the
you hear about
can.
this, Tom Brady?
I have, and it brings me no joy, absolutely none. Let's keep rolling here. I got a few more games to get to. We got, speaking of the Colts, we got them going over to Foxborough to face the Patriots. Patriots 5.5-point favorites in this one. Where we headed here?
Man, both of these teams suck, but I suppose only one can lose this game. Uh, I I think the Taylor thing is really discouraging because they're going to keep trying to get him into the game now. They're going to, no matter whether he's fully recovered, they're always just going to be like, maybe a game time decision. He doesn't need to practice. It's like, yeah, he needs to not practice and not play, or else his ankle is going to not be able to practice. And you're going to keep doing this until however many of you idiots need to be fired. It's insane. Deion Jackson is interesting. If they are smart, I don't think they will be, because smart in this case is to basically like Reich's just trying to cobble together wins. He thinks like if I scrape together some kind of dignified appearance for a few weeks, I might be able to keep my job, which I'm so good at. But when you're thinking that way, you're like, oh, I don't care if Jonathan Taylor aggravates this ankle. If I'm fired in 3 weeks, if we don't win this week, I don't care about Jonathan Taylor's health beyond this week. So he has basically a conflict of interest there affecting his judgment. And I assume, like the scoundrel he is, he will advocate for Taylor to play regardless of how it relates to Taylor's own career interests. And with that said, if they don't do that, then I think Deion Jackson's pretty good. And at that point, it's like we're just wondering what the Colts offense in general looks like, especially at Foxborough against Belichick getting back the New England Belichicks. I don't know if the Patriots are getting back Kyle Duggar. Him being out is big for the middle of the field. They're just not giving us an injury report. All right. Well, if Kyle Duggar's out, then guys like Granson, I guess Paris Campbell, maybe even look a little better. I don't worry about Pittman or Alec Pierce against these Patriots corners. I guess Jalen Mills can kind of run with Pittman and has a similar, or he's a bigger corner anyway. But Pierce can definitely run away from Mills. Pittman might be able to himself. And then those other corners are like Miles Bryant, the slot corner, is just awful. They got to get him off the field. Jonathan Jones is good, but he's like 5'9.5", 185 pounds, and Pierce is 6'3", Pittman 6'4". So those outside receivers should be able to do something, particularly if Frank Reich calls an offense that at all suits Sam Ehlinger. Like having zero carries, zero scrambles in the first half last week. That's one of those facts that if you just told me that ahead of the game, like, hey, by the way, Sam Ehlinger is going to go into the second half without any carries, that would have led to only two possibilities to conclude. One is that the Colts will lose. The other was that Ehlinger got hurt. There's no third possibility. And like I was saying before, Sam Ehlinger led Texas in rush attempts in 3 of his 4 years there. One of those 3 years, he only played 9 games in a 13-game season. He is run dependent. Like, he gets the pass looks that he gets and has whatever level of success with those looks that he does, with the defense presuming a particular level of run threat. And in this case, we're talking upwards of 12, 15 times a game. So when you take that player and make him never run, that's just letting the defense play on easy mode. They're just like, hey, we don't have to defend that. And now Ehlinger has to be a player that he's never been. He's never even succeeded as a Texas quarterback playing football this way. So that he would ever do it in the NFL is just an absurd idea. And it's, Reich's got to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's that was the most backwards usage that I could have potentially cooked up as
Literally the
far as.
stupidest thing he could have done, and he did it. Bless him.
Yep. Some bitterness for me. I really dropped the bag for him because I figured that, hey, he's gonna it could be ugly, but the fantasy results could be good.
And to be fair to Ehlinger, he did a good job for the circumstances. Like,
Yeah.
he did more than anyone could reasonably request of him.
Do you buy any, or into your analysis, do you bake any of just kind of the fact that Belichick tends to have a lot of success against inexperienced quarterbacks?
I think Belichick's just generally competent, and he gets better at home. And Frank Reich is generally incompetent, and he's losing that team. And probably a lot of assistant coaches on that team reaching out to journalists anonymously right now about how Frank Reich is and all that.
Yeah, it's a tough scene out there in Indy. So I like the Patriots to win this one in an ugly game. As you can imagine, the total in that one just 39.5 or 40, depending on where you're looking. Before we get on over to our next game, got a message from our friends over at MKF. Football is officially back. You guys knew that. On Monkey Knife Fight with all the NFL action you're looking for. And if college football is more your speed, they've got plenty of that too. On Monkey Knife Fight, there's no sharks, no salary caps, and no math. It's just easy to play, easy to win, daily fantasy player props. Join now at monkeyknifefight.com and you'll get your first game free. Then use promo code RWNFL to get your first deposit matched instantly up to $100. So, what are you waiting for? Join Monkey Knife Fight today. Jets, Bills, 12.5-point favorites on the road in the Meadowlands against the Jets. I love the Bills here.
I'll take the Bills as well, John.
I think last week they're at home, they're coming off the bye, so maybe some of those factors steered people towards taking the Bills to cover, but the Packers still at least have Aaron Rodgers. The Jets have Zach Wilson, and they're in the division. I think that the Bills want to just kind of send a bit of a message here. I think the Bills win this one running away. I think this could be one of the bigger scoring differentials that we see this season.
Yeah, the Jets are a toxic organization. Their quarterback is marked for just hideous numbers, whatever amount of playing time they give him from here. And they're in for a very painful second half of the season. This game will not go well for them.
Yep. I started to buy a little bit on the Jets after their mini win streak, but I felt good about the Patriots last week, and I think that this is going to get pretty ugly for them. I guess
they have a front seven. That's what they have in Sauce Gardner. That's what they have going for them. But that offense puts the defense in such short fields. If you have varied personnel in the passing game, you can get that passing defense hurt. You just got to double team Quinnen Williams in the pass rush. And Zach Wilson cannot play right now. They might have to bench him in this game because players are going to start complaining.
It is that rough. Any thoughts on the Buffalo backfield? I think that's really, everything else is pretty well established at this point, but that them getting Hines, it feels like they didn't fit. They had a backfield problem, and Hines doesn't fix it at all. If anything, he makes it more complicated.
Yeah, so I feel like it's generally structural reasons that the Bills running backs didn't do much as pass catchers with Josh Allen there. I think it has to do with the spacing of the offense and where the running backs line up in that spacing. So I don't even believe that Hines is necessarily going to do anything. He's actually a player who requires a lot of accommodation. That's what was so annoying to me about him with Indianapolis. Ballard, was all high on this idea of I've got a pass catching specialist running back. I'm so forward thinking. I know that the run is less valuable than the pass. I'll make Naheem Hines my prized project. And all the analytics dorks were like, yes, this is such a great idea. Put Taylor on the bench, and truly you will thrive then. And nothing these people ever say turns out true, but it just doesn't matter. They just keep getting hired, keep scolding other people about how they need to learn how math works or whatever. But the thing with Naheem Hines was he required a lot of accommodation because he's not actually skilled from scrimmage. And so they tried to dial up these plays where they'd get him these targets. And yeah, if you had a Kamara type or some, ETN, someone with some hint of elusiveness, then you'd be talking big numbers. But Naheem Hines is this player with which you forfeit the run threat because he can't run. And in the event that if even as a pass catcher, he kind of often needs to get matched up against a linebacker one-on-one, and he'll win that matchup. But this is why the fact that he can't run is crucial and makes him ultimately useless. That the defenses know that he can't run, so they're not going to put a linebacker on him. They're going to put a corner or a safety on him, and he's not good enough as a route runner to beat them. So the pass catching specialist utility is already whittled down to screen pass looks, and the rest of the time maybe a decoy kind of function because you can clear out space with his speed. But from scrimmage, he doesn't do anything. He never has. He always just runs into traffic. And I'm not convinced that he'll be a better pass catcher than Singletary has been this year. So uh, I'm not even convinced Hines will run ahead of James Cook. Like, I think they'll give him a shot in a week or two. And I don't know, unless the C parts and the defense looks the other way, Hines is just going to run into somebody.
James Cook, I did like the Leo DiCaprio point at the TV from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood when they split him out into the slot last week and he had the big catch down the field. I'm like, that's how you use him. Yes, been talking about
Yeah.
that. But again, like you don't necessarily like make that the staple of your offense when you have Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis. But James Cook capable of cool plays, but I don't know if he's someone that you're uh, going to be getting a ton of volume
I
out
bet.
of.
How about this? I will say, whereas before I was like, no way in hell should you be buying James Cook in Dynasty or redraft. I will say, send out an offer in Dynasty now. I mean, he's not going to do nothing, and there might be some people, especially the way some of these like Dynasty people just despair over any what is it called, any data point that pops up that's slightly less than unambiguously positive. They just go like, "Oh God, it's over. He's dust," and they freak out and they trade him for some other player who sucks because they saw some advanced metric that they don't know the inputs of and don't understand the mechanics of that said like this player might not suck. And it's like the error here is a lot of people are dismaying over Naheem Hines being there when again I'm biased, I guess, to be fair, but I'm also biased against James Cook. I have no reason to tell you
Mhm.
James Cook is better than Naheem Hines. I don't like either of them, but James Cook is better than Naheem Hines.
Yes. All right. All right. So we've got that going. Let's grab a couple questions here. Isaac wants to know. He traded Keenan Allen and Chuba for Pollard and Mooney. Is that a win?
If Allen stays semi-retired, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, otherwise, if he comes back, he's catching 10 passes in like 80% of the games.
True. True. Let's see. Gus Edwards or Michael Carter rest of season.
Man, I Gus, just because I'm thinking maybe some touchdowns. I don't know.
Yeah, I hated seeing him, tweak the hamstring last week, but at least it
Oh,
wasn't.
right. Is there an update on that?
I'm not sure if they had a practice report yesterday because they play on Monday
Right.
night.
Hmm.
So I think we'll know more.
I need
Uh,
Gus to play to be clear. If he's not playing, then I prefer Carter.
of course, of course.
Also,
And then let's see, one more. Should I trade Dak and Mostert for Miles Sanders?
I wouldn't. I
I don't
mean,
think so
unless
either.
unless it's like an 8-team league and your next quarterback is Jalen Hurts or something.
Right. So I would stand pat there. Let's go the Kirk Cousins revenge game. Vikings Commanders.
um, Man, I really hate these teams. Well, the Vikings have good play. Maybe there's something to do with O'Connell's system that I just can't follow. Like I don't understand why, and I'm very disturbed by the fact that the Vikings offense has just gotten worse for no real reason. Like there's better players, or at least no worse than in previous years, and yet the results are just down. And I don't think Kirk Cousins is great or anything, but I have trouble blaming him for this. So to me, it seems like the new coach has to be the cause. Sometimes teams take just a little while and eventually get to, adjusting to a new offense and all of a sudden just look different and look better. Maybe that's what's going on with the Vikings here, but if not, then I think they just are sluggish, much more sluggish than their record anyway. Like I think you see it in Kirk Cousins' numbers. You look at his peripherals and it's like this isn't something's wrong here. Their record would make you maybe think otherwise, but something is wrong there. So going to Washington, even against Washington, terrible defense, I worry about assuming what I would normally assume with these Vikings players. Like I would normally say upgrade for Justin Jefferson, upgrade for whatever everybody, I guess. And in a game like when a team is playing like the Vikings are right now, and especially going on the road, I just don't know if I should take things like that for granted or if I should assume some level of dysfunction that might not actually have a really solid statistical basis, but one that we can kind of reason is there just because of how they're playing under previous production levels. But yeah, there's nothing on paper Washington should be able to do here. They shouldn't be able to defend those receivers. They shouldn't be able to stop the run on offense. I mean, I like Taylor Heineke enough. I think he's better than Wentz. And it seems like even Ron Rivera and Scott Turner uh, are getting sick of the JD McKissick thing, which even now it's funny how they try to just justify that guy, like giving him put in McKissick for the 3rd and 14. Like, you mean just scratch him? Like, why? What if you're not a crap team and you don't end up in 3rd and 14? You just don't have anything for McKissick to do? Huh. Funny how that works. Anyway, Brian Robinson also still sucks. The more that they use him, the sooner they are likely to lose a game. But yeah, Gibbo is the best. Who could have known?
Gibbo. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I'm loving the Gibbo resurgence. He's
I mean,
really
it's so pathetic, man. These coaches just like screwing with these players' careers. It's absurd. The level of just the number of like scoundrel coaches. You know, it's a very this thing with Ron Rivera and Scott Turner treating Gibson this way is a variation of what Frank Reich did to his offensive coordinator Mike Brady. It's like you screwed up as a coach. You have failed in some way as a coach, and instead of just owning it, you're saying like, I bet Gibson's the problem. If we just bench Gibson, we'd finally have a life that weren't so bad. And what do you know? It turned out to be just totally, totally wrong. And Ron Rivera's never going to apologize. Scott Turner's never going to apologize. They're just going to like, yeah, can we have our job still, please? It's fine that we just wasted like 6 weeks of this offense, right? Like it's not a big deal if we're that bad as coaches, right? Anyway, I can't wait till some of these regimes are just gone. Hopefully, never come back anywhere.
and salt the earth over him. I guess what one last thing on this one. Hawkinson maybe not super involved this coming week, but moving forward, how do you think he affects this offense?
Well, I think Hawkinson's good. I don't know if so. Part of that dysfunction that I was talking about with the Minnesota passing game, it was really showing up with Irv Smith, like Adam Thielen, and even more with Irv Smith. Now, I don't I don't need to believe Irv Smith is actually good to believe also that there's no way he's as bad as his numbers were. And I'm kind of just chalking up his really bad numbers to that dysfunction, that I'm theorizing is there, even though I don't know what it is specifically or why it's there. So I can't just assume Hawkinson will improve that on the basis of talent. Like Irv Smith's numbers got way worse this year, even relative to his, disappointing first 2 years. So I don't know. I can't really see Hawkinson doing much unless he kind of just does like a hulking thing, which he can do, which he did at Iowa a lot too, where he just kind of like breaks a couple tackles and runs away. But I doubt he's going to be like schemed wide open or anything.
Okay. All right. Noted. Noted. At least this Vikings offense, I would expect scoring more touchdowns, getting in the red zone a little bit more often moving forward than what he was going to be dealing with in Detroit. So maybe we start to see
He is
Hawkinson.
better for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
So that should help, but I don't think it necessarily like launches him. Uh, let's keep rolling here. Got a couple more games to get to. Only 2 games in the afternoon window this coming Sunday, and as you would believe it, this game is much better. And as we expected going into the season, the Rams Bucks is one that I don't really want to see more of it than I absolutely have to. But the Seahawks Cards game, baby,
Didn't they
let's
just play?
go.
Um, they played 2 weeks
This
ago,
is
didn't
in
they?
Arizona, and remember
Okay.
Arizona. The total was like 50 a couple weeks ago up in Seattle. They only scored a touchdown on a blocked punt, and then they missed the extra point. I mean, the offense just didn't show up in Seattle, but that was the Marquise Brown injury game. That was the last game of DeAndre Hopkins' suspension. Now they're at home. They get a second crack at the Seattle defense. Obviously, Seattle's defense must have done something to kind of fluster Arizona the first time around. Can Cliff make the adjustments necessary?
I don't know. Again, we have to give Cliff some trivial amount of credit for so much as putting DeAndre Hopkins in the slot one time in a game, let alone 15 or whatever it was. And Hopkins had another big game. He was beating Cam Dantzler last week. This week, though, it's going to be interesting because if they keep DeAndre Hopkins on the left side all the time, which Cliff is still mostly doing that, then the primary matchup for Hopkins in this game is going to be Tariq Woolen. And Woolen is not as polished of a corner as Dantzler. Like Dantzler's problem is he has no tools. Like he knows how to play corner, but he has the body of a lesser athlete, so he can only prove it so much on the field. Whereas Woolen, the concern was that he didn't know how to play corner, which allowed the NFL to let a 6'4", 205-pound corner who runs a 4.26 and has insane jumps fall to the fifth round. So it's a different scenario from last week, as in like kind of the opposite, and it's going to be an interesting experiment. I don't know which way it's going to go, but Hopkins is going to have to actually create some distance from Woolen, like this thing that it'll work against Dantzler too. Dantzler being merely 6'2", 185. It's like Hopkins can play at the rim against a guy like that. It's like that guy's
Yeah.
also going to be at the rim, but Hopkins can still bully him at that point. He's not going to bully Woolen. Woolen's 20 pounds heavier at least than Dantzler and 4/10 of a second faster in the 40. So
Bully
Woolen,
Woolen.
yeah, he needs to lose him. And I don't know, laterally, sure, but I don't know. Especially if Woolen has like good intel on the route combos that Hopkins is running, and it loses a little bit of separation, but he might recover fast enough to still get to the ball. So Cliff needs to come up with something. He can't just do the thing where he just hits play and hopes it all works. Like that's not going to cut it. It tends to be all that he has, and it has tended to not cut it.
No, yeah, obviously it hasn't. They've shown a little bit of things here and there since what I think will end up being the nadir of their season, that game up in Seattle a few weeks ago. But Seattle's still a really tough matchup for them, and that's why the Cards are just 2-point favorites at home. That kind of, in today's NFL, that kind of suggests that the bookmakers view them pretty even on a neutral field.
I'd take Seattle to win. I mean, trap games and just like inexplicable letdowns happen, but that is precisely what it would take from Seattle. They are a much better team.
They really are. It's pretty amazing. This is Pete Carroll, Coach of the Year.
I mean, the Seattle defense still sucks, and some of that is probably Pete's fault with whatever level of personnel input he has. But I mean, at the very least, Pete has reshaped the narrative of him as an offensive coach. Like he still gets all that credit for the Legion of Boom cover 3 innovation at the time, but consider the level of insight it took for Pete Carroll to know all this time what Russell Wilson was, and both harbor that knowledge and keep the public from realizing just how he knew it and how sure he was of it. It's like the one criticism we can make of Pete Carroll at this point is that he didn't bench Wilson for Geno Smith.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that masterful.
You
Getting the
coward.
ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is hilarious. Like each passing week, there's always a tweet from one of the current Seahawks players or the past ones. Like even Tyler Lockett went a little bit scorched earth. Like it's crazy.
No one likes Russell Wilson.
Russ is down about as bad as you
can't
possibly
stand
can
it.
be. Justin Tucker was making fun of him on the plane ride. Like, oof.
Man, you're getting clowned on by kickers. Time to
Even
go.
goated kickers notwithstanding, that's still tough look. Shelly wants to know if Keenan Allen is out, DJ Moore or Josh Palmer. Still DJ Moore.
I'd go with Moore, yeah.
Yeah. And then one more here. One running back, one in the flex of Rondale, Michael Carter, or Gibson. I'm starting Gibson and Rondale.
Yeah, I am too.
Okay. All right. We're gonna burn through these last 3 games. Bucks, Rams, Bucks, 3-point favorites at home against the Rams. Both these teams extremely embattled. Not a whole lot else you can say about it at this point.
They're both pretty ridiculous teams, but I am awestruck by the cluelessness of McVay and the Rams decision makers. They don't have a clue what's going on. They don't get it. It's over. You got to start building something in the future, and they just don't get it. They really think we could still do something with this if we just start benching random guys and just start putting random guys on the field. It'll all work out. No, that's what loser teams do. You're a loser team. You're over.
Yeah. Are you in loser denial? As McVay gets a cup of pudding dumped on his head.
I don't know that reference, but
Billy Madison.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I'll hold the pudding and dump it on his head.
He's gonna mess with his hair gel. But even still, even for as busted as the Rams appear to be, and they are, Bucks looking pretty rough for their own right.
Right. So they gotta, not that this is easy. They have to keep Cooper Cup from going basically nuclear on them, and if they do that, that's a wrap. That's there's nothing else the Rams can do. It's like even with Van Jefferson back last week, he didn't get a target. Like and it didn't get a catch anyway. Uh, they suck. They don't have good players. They have three good players, four if you include the guy who needs Tommy John, and that's not enough. So I
No,
think
it's not.
Tom Brady could turn the ball over a bunch of times, but that's what it would take because the Tampa defense has more leverage on the Rams offense than the vice versa. So slow, ugly, yes, probably, but Brady tends to, or at least against Stafford. It's like I can't see Brady as a greater turnover liability than Stafford, especially Stafford with the elbow as it is with this crap offense as it is.
And the Bucks defense was pretty banged up going into last week. They get this sort of mini bye. They should be a little bit healthier. Um,
Winfield
you
would
know,
be big. I don't know if he's back, but he's an important
he's
player to
questionable,
them.
which is better than out. So
Okay.
he did not practice on Wednesday, however, but
Mm.
um, you know, I'm, I think that there's still a chance, and even if he's not out there, I do like the Bucks in this setup. Let's hit the Sunday nighter quick. We got the Chiefs, 12-point favorites against the Titans. Are the Titans in their 5-game win streak? Is it all because of the schedule, or is there a little bit of something there?
There's Derrick Henry, and a run defense, I guess. Uh, the the Titans are not a very good team. They certainly aren't varied in their abilities. It's just the NFL is a terrible product this year. There's like four good teams, three good teams. There's a rather large group of mediocre teams, some of which capitalize on the low level of competition more than others, but they're still mediocre teams. And uh, granted, that spread is quite a bit. Like if only because the Titans tend to run the ball enough that they could get whooped, give up like 200 more yards than they accumulate themselves and still just kind of have time of possession such that you still don't get 13 points cleared at the end. But uh, I don't know what their defense can do about the Chiefs' offense. Like their corner personnel is rather thin. The Chiefs have and I'm not even talking about Tony. I think Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and Travis Kelce is already enough to put the Titans in a really difficult spot in their coverage. So yeah, the one thing I'll say is they of course should stop giving snaps to Jerick McKinnon. Just give all of them to Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If they don't want to get Ronald Jones involved, fine, but just stop giving the ball to McKinnon. That's how they end up in situations where things are needlessly difficult because they keep putting reps on the field that get no results, and it's arrogant to just keep doing that voluntarily.
No, it absolutely is. It's wasting snaps, valuable snaps.
They used to get like 3 yards a snap from Spencer Ware, and now they can't get anybody to get like 2 yards. It's ridiculous.
It is strange, funky. But I like the Titans to cover here, but I don't feel great about it. I know that Andy Reid is impeccable coming off the bye, all this and that, but I think the Titans are playing just well enough to keep this one respectable. Unlike they did earlier in the season, like it was pretty easy to spot that they were going to get destroyed by the Bills. I think that they've figured some things out enough to where they keep this one teetering on respectable. Let's round it out here, Mario. We got Ravens, Saints, Monday Night Football in New Orleans. Ravens 2.5-point favorites.
Yeah. God, I don't know. Greg Roman is such a fool that I just can't really take anything for granted with the Ravens offense and like Bateman being in this situation now. It's just sickening. Um, the Ravens should win and relatively comfortably, but it's this should just never really happens with them.
I thought that they found something last week, especially in the second half. First half, they ran it 3 times, and the results were pitiful. Of course, they even got set up, I think, like inside the Buccaneers 10-yard line off of a muffed punt, and still didn't punch it in. but then they found the run game. It ran for like over 200 yards in the second half alone on the Bucks. That was impressive. And I thought that Lamar Jackson, despite no Mark Andrews being out there, we finally had the Isaiah Likely breakout game. You saw Devin Duvernay continue to impress. Even Demarcus Robinson did a couple of things. So I think that the way that the schedule sets up for this Ravens team right now, they don't have anyone on their schedule that is above 500 the rest of the way. They're obviously coming off the mini bye here. They get the bye next week as well. Then they get the Panthers. I'm going to be in the house for that one. And the Broncos. I mean, it sets up for Baltimore to kind of make a run here and put some distance between themselves and the Bengals. But this game, I think, is the trickiest one over this next little bit.
I worry about the Broncos one because if Giro Viro is going to put Greg Roman in a lion tamer, but I think that yeah, the Ravens have no good excuse for failure, and they should be able to run and all that. But particularly the stuff like the Demarcus Robinson plays, I know there's a tendency to see something like that happen and kind of be like, hey, they got something here. There's a little more than we expected here, and and at the time that's how you should feel. But beyond that point, it actually means that there's bad luck coming your way because if Robinson has a good play, the odds are simply that he is not going to have another one now. Like whatever number of good plays that he has, it's a small number, and no matter how much more he does over expectation, it just means there's that much more regression coming because he's just constitutionally incapable of making certain plays reliably. And those plays were like, by the skin of his teeth too. He's like, credit to him, he made good plays, but the
He
issue is
did.
he is not a talented player, and it's difficult for him. He has to make heroic efforts to get the same 7 yards that Duvernay can blindfolded. Like that's just how talent works. And they were lucky to get those plays from Robinson, and they were lucky to have Likely produce the way that he did. They were lucky that Gus Edwards was around to give them some big plays in the run game. But when some of those regressions hit, I do worry still because there is no reinforcement coming in. They refuse to use Tylan Wallace as a route runner, even though he would for sure automatically get them more yards per route than Demarcus Robinson would. They don't seem to be able to negotiate these approaches, and when it comes to needing to make an adjustment in game, practically all that leaves the Ravens with is they start running less and start throwing more with what is supposed to be run personnel. And Lamar is effectively hung out to dry in that case. And, the people who are football illiterate watch that and go like, oh, I told you he couldn't pass. Like, when have you seen a 300-pounder in trips formation lining up at receiver and running a route other than with this Greg Roman offense? Quickly, I can just say you haven't seen it before. You will never see it again. It'll never happen. That's what Lamar is up against, and when they fall
Well,
behind, it's a death sentence.
would your mind change on Patrick Ricard if I told you that he dressed up as Robert Smith from The Cure for Halloween?
I mean, he's got
Because
to
I
do
believe he
something
did.
cool to make up for all those racist tweets, I suppose. But
Oh, mm.
yeah, he has some bad ones.
Oh no.
When he was at Delaware or whatever
Maine.
place, Maine.
Maine.
Yeah, same thing. But yeah, so Ricard is a good player, to be serious. The problem is Greg Roman has an offensive philosophy such that he goes, it's fine to have a trips formation where one guy is a 300-pounder that you just moved from defensive tackle 2 years ago, and one of the other ones is Nick Boyle, and the receiver is Demarcus Robinson. Like, that's a play they'll actually run. And when Lamar gets sacked or throws the ball away, Greg Roman's like, well, what the hell happened? What went wrong there? It's like, I could have told you before the snap it was dead.
My thing is like that for better or for worse, they're going to have to use Demarcus Robinson for this next little bit because I do
Worse.
think, unfortunately, like he's better than Tylan Wallace.
But
I
it's
don't know
just as a
what's
blocker. That's why Roman was able to pick off of Oakland, Las Vegas waivers, Demarcus Robinson, who was in final cuts, and he's like, I know you don't even know the system. I don't need you to know the system. I just want you to go out there and block. And for some reason, it's important to me that this rep is a wide receiver rather than a tight. They would have been better off just having Nick Boyle run the Demarcus Robinson snaps because yeah, you're doing nothing as a pass catcher, same as Robinson, but at least you have an actual blocking advantage. Like there's not been a single play this year where they were like, oh my God, Demarcus Robinson's block made it all happen. That's not a thing. It's just Greg Roman fixating on optics that ultimately don't mean anything. But anyway, if they put Wallace at outside receiver, I'm telling you, they're going to get more yards for it. But Roman won't do it because he's skinny, basically.
I mean, I'd love to see it. And with Bateman out, that they kind of have the luxury of
Oh man, I
checking
hate
out
seeing
on.
Prochet out there. That's the one thing I'll say. Is like I'd rather have like Wallace in the slot and Robinson outside than Prochet in the slot and Robinson outside.
Yeah, my optimism on Prochet has failed me, but you know
Practice
what?
squatter.
There's something going on here. I think that they figured something out in the second half. We'll see if they can continue it, or if that was more just about the Buccaneers being wilting. But I don't know. There are shades of 2019 in the sense where they didn't really figure it out until close to this point in the season. Had the impressive win out in Seattle, had the bye the following week, and then got red hot down the stretch. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but I'm not saying it either. And this is the first optimistic things I've said about the Ravens literally all year. So I don't know. Take that for what you will.
I must push back then. Even so, no, I just I hope your optimism turns out to be warranted. I just feel like we've seen this before, and Greg Roman, when he has his good stretches, it's not because he's ever doing anything different. It's because he's doing the same thing as ever, and it just started working better for some reason, and that for some reason always dries up eventually. So
Or
especially in the
yeah,
playoffs.
I mean, you can draw up like the path last week where like his plan going into the game was moronic, and it went so bad that they had to change to plan B, and it worked. So it seems like his plan A
If he could
needs
ever
to
get the
fail,
right plan A, yeah, it'd be a game changer.
but that doesn't really seem to. And I'm not saying that that Baltimore is going to seriously challenge Kansas City or Buffalo, but that someone has to be the
They
third
have
best team in the
they have
AFC.
a former MVP quarterback who won it at 22. They should be able to do those things. It should be
Yeah.
like median range outcome as they're doing those things. And yet here we are acting like if the planets align just right. Oh
Yep.
well.
So,
Greg,
well.
you bastard. I suppose there's
Oh
nothing I
man.
can do about it, but if I could, know that I would.
Uh, all right, that's going to wrap things up for us here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Again, presented by our friends over at No House Advantage. Real quick, Mario, all guts, all glory type of pick here. Georgia or Tennessee this weekend? One versus
Georgia,
two.
John.
Let's go. National
Clearly.
champs. We're running it back. That's going to do it for us here. Catch you next week.
Try RotoWire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to rotowire.com/try.